My name is Emily, and I'll never forget the day I learned exactly where I stood in my family. That day wasn't just my graduation. It was the day my parents made it painfully clear that I didn't matter to them. I had worked harder than anyone I knew to get there. 4 years of late nights, skipped parties, balancing jobs just to afford books. While others were outliving the so-called college dream, I was grinding, determined to prove myself. My reward? I was graduating valedictorian, something my parents should have been proud of. But pride wasn't what they felt that morning. I came downstairs, cap and gown draped over my arm, expecting my family to be ready to celebrate me. Instead, I found my parents standing in the driveway, smiling like they'd just won the lottery. And in the middle of it all was my younger sister, Lily, screaming with joy as she hugged the hood of a brand new Tesla. The sight punched the air out of my lungs. "Congratulations, sweetheart," my dad said, handing Lily the keys. "You deserve this for all the hard work you've done." I nearly choked. Hard work. Lily barely scraped through school. She skipped assignments, skipped classes, spent most nights out with friends, and came home reeking of alcohol and perfume. But she was fun. She was charming. She was the daughter they liked showing off. And me, the responsible one, the achiever, the one graduating top of her class that very day, all I got was a bus schedule slapped onto the counter. "You'll be fine, Emily," my mom said, brushing me off when I asked if this was a joke. "The bus stop is just down the street. You'll make it on time." I stood there, cap and gown in hand, while Lily squealed behind me, revving her Tesla like she had just won a race. That was the first moment I truly understood. I wasn't their daughter. I was their investment, something they could use to brag about when it was convenient, but never someone they actually valued. I walked to the bus stop in silence, every step heavier than the last. When the bus arrived, it was nearly full. People stared at me in my cap and gown, whispering, snickering, probably wondering why the so-called valedictorian couldn't even get a ride to her own graduation. By the time I arrived at the ceremony, the parking lot was filled with proud families snapping photos beside cars decked out with graduation signs. Lily was there too, leaning against her Tesla, a smug smile plastered across her face as classmates gathered around her, asking for rides and admiring her gift. No one even noticed me walking past, clutching my gown like it was armor. Inside, the ceremony began. Name after name was called. Families erupted in cheers, cameras flashing. When my name was announced, I heard polite applause from the crowd. But not from my parents, because they weren't there. I glanced toward the doors and saw them outside, posing with Lily beside her car, laughing, taking pictures, while I stood, on stage alone delivering the speech I had worked so hard to write. The whispers around me were deafening. Why aren't her parents here? Isn't she the top student? Did they really just skip her moment? I finished my speech with my throat burning, my diploma trembling in my hands, and a smile that hid the rage boiling inside me. They had stolen my day, humiliated me in front of everyone, and that was the day I promised myself. I would get revenge. You see, Lily being spoiled wasn't new. It was a pattern I had lived with my entire life. When I wanted piano lessons, they said we couldn't afford it. But when Lily wanted ballet, they hired the best instructor in town. When I begged for help with college applications, they told me I was smart enough to figure it out myself. But when Lily needed help cheating her way through high school exams, they paid tutors to do the work for her. Everything was lopsided. Every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone. Lily got gifts, attention, admiration. I got lectures about working harder, being more responsible. At first, I convinced myself it was okay. Maybe they saw potential in me and thought I didn't need their support. Maybe they just wanted to make Lily feel special. But that Tesla shattered any illusions I had left. That wasn't about potential. That wasn't about balance. That was about love and who deserved it in their eyes. And it wasn't me. Chapter 4. Leaving it all behind, the next day, I left for college again. But this time, I left with a new mindset. I wasn't just going to survive. I wasn't just going to succeed. I was going to rise so high that they would choke on their regret. I cut off all emotional ties. I stopped calling home. I stopped seeking their approval. If they wanted Lily to be their perfect child, fine. She could have their shallow love. Meanwhile, I poured myself into my studies. Not just academics, life itself, finance, business law, corporate strategy. I devoured knowledge like it was fuel for my fire. Every A on a paper, every scholarship, every opportunity I earned was another brick in the empire I was building in silence. And while I grew, Lily floundered. She dropped out of college after 1 year, blaming toxic professors. She burned through money, wrecked friendships, and posted endless selfies with her Tesla, desperate for validation. My parents kept bailing her out, paying her bills, covering her mistakes, singing her praises to anyone who would listen, and I let them, because I was waiting. 4 years later, while I was preparing to graduate with honors again, this time from one of the most prestigious business schools in the country, I started hearing whispers about my parents' company. They owned a mid-sized real estate firm. It had always done well, but suddenly, things were changing. Bad investments, failed projects, mounting debt. At first, I ignored it. Then I realized this was my opening. I dug deeper. Late nights combing through public records, property filings, financial reports. And what I found was delicious. Their empire wasn't just cracking, it was crumbling, and I had the skills and connections to finish the job. I built a network of investors during college. Quietly, discreetly, I began buying up their debt. Every loan, every mortgage, every piece of credit tied to their business. Slowly, I wrapped my hands around the throat of their empire. Meanwhile, I kept playing the role of the distant but polite daughter. I sent the occasional holiday card, responded to their calls with short, civil answers, never letting them suspect that I was watching their every move. And Lily? She was my favorite pawn. She bragged constantly about how much money she was spending, how my parents were still funding her lifestyle. I listened, I encouraged, and I recorded every single conversation because I knew those recordings would destroy them. Eventually, their desperation boiled over. One evening, I got the call. "Emily," my father said, his voice strained, "we know things haven't been perfect between us, but we need your help. The company is struggling. You're successful now. Maybe you could step in." I nearly laughed. After years of abandonment, after humiliating me on my graduation day, they suddenly wanted my help? I told them I would consider it, but only if they held a family celebration. Something big, a grand event where they could invite all their investors, clients, and friends. I told them I'd make an announcement there. They agreed instantly. The night of the party arrived. The hall was glittering, filled with people who still believed my parents were successful, honorable, trustworthy. My parents strutted in proudly, dragging Lily behind them, still clinging to her Tesla like it was the crown jewel of their empire. They expected me to stand on stage and announce my financial support, but what I gave them instead was destruction. The lights dimmed. A screen lit up behind me. Slide 1, my graduation photo. Me in my cap and gown, standing alone, while the reserved seats for my parents sat empty. Gasps filled the room. Slide 2, Lily, posing with her Tesla, while captions showed how much company money had been funneled into her lifestyle. Slide 3, bank statements, proof of debts, evidence of unpaid employees. Slide 4, recordings of Lily mocking investors, laughing about how her parents would fix everything anyway. By the time I finished, the room was silent. My parents stood pale and shaking, their perfect image shattered. And then I delivered the final blow. I revealed that I was the one who had acquired their debts, that every dollar they owed, every property they thought they still owned, now belonged to me. The audience erupted, some in shock, others in anger. Investors stormed out, clients canceled contracts on the spot. And my parents? They crumbled, begging me to stop. But I didn't. Within weeks, their company collapsed. I sold their properties, liquidated their assets, and repossessed their home. Lily's precious Tesla, gone. Taken back by the bank as collateral. My parents, once respected and admired, were left with nothing. When I met them one final time, my father's voice cracked. "Emily, we're still your parents. We made mistakes, but we're family." I looked him dead in the eye and said, "No, family doesn't humiliate their daughter on the biggest day of her life. Family doesn't make her ride the bus while handing her sister a Tesla. You taught me I wasn't part of this family, and now I'm proving you right. I turned and walked away, leaving them with nothing but the wreckage of their own choices. Now, years later, I sometimes drive past that old bus stop where I once stood in my cap and gown, feeling worthless. But I don't ride the bus anymore. Pull up in a luxury car of my own, one I bought, one I earned, and sometimes I see them there. My parents, worn down, carrying groceries in cheap bags. Lily, older now, bitter, her charm long gone. They look at me with regret, but they never approach. They know better, because I am no longer the daughter they forced onto a bus. I am the woman who took everything from them, and that is the sweetest revenge.